Are you ready? Stand by.
Welcome to the Three Gun Show, brought to you by Armalite. This is episode 131, and I'm your host, Dave Hartman. My guest this week is a guy that's been on a winning streak lately in limited/factory/tack irons division, Rick Birdsall. But before we get into this interview, a couple things I want to tell you about. One, the Three Gun Show logo t-shirts are for sale, and you can get yours at threegunshow.com/merch, MERCH. When you get yours, snap a picture of your shirt with your three guns laid out like they are in the photo. Rifle on the bottom, shotgun in the middle, pistol on the top, next to your t-shirt, and post a picture of it on social media. Tag the show in it, and we'll have a good time sharing that around. There's a bunch of examples in the Instagram feed, so this is kind of growing some legs here, and it's got its own hashtag too. So take a look at the Instagram feed at Three Gun Show and play along. 2, be sure to listen after the interview for a special offer for you on Armalite 3-gun gear. Now, back in episode 119, Rick Birdsall was on the show, and we did commentary on the 3-gun Nation Southwestern Regional Pro match, and got a lot of good comments from that, a lot of good feedback. They said, Rick and I had a good give and take, and I need to have him back on for a long-form interview. So here we are. And this is a long-form interview, and we cover a wide array of topics, from footwear to precision rifle shooting as crossover training to longevity in the sport. Show notes can be found at threegunshow.com/episode 131. Now enjoy this one with Rick Birdsall. Rick, welcome back to the Three Gun Show.
What's going on, Dave?
Oh,
it's
man.
been a long time, man.
It has been a long time. So you actually forgot that you had a Skype account, because we've done this quite a few times, but lately we've just been doing it in person. And so this
what are we on now? What number is this?
I don't know, like 6 or 7 or something like that.
No, but like what episode number is it?
What episode? So this is I don't know which one this is going to be, but just yesterday I dropped 129.
Okay, well, the last time we used the Skype was on episode 7.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been a long time. So I'm just I'm looking at this as like a little nostalgia, little throwback, and maybe like a mix up to our game.
Yeah, man, throwback.
Yeah, for sure. So Rick, man, we've seen each other quite a bit this year at different matches and stuff like that, and it looks like you've got quite a real little run going.
Yeah, it's been a pretty good year so far. I was able to maintain some of my momentum from the end of last season. It's always challenging and year after year to try to stay at the top of the sport, because there's always so many people that are coming up, and every year techniques get improved and people get better, and you got to fight for every inch. Yeah,
so that's a good point you bring up there. So last year, the last match that I shot with you was 3-gun Nation Nationals, and you brought home a national title, which was really cool in factory division. This year, you're on a little bit of a streak with USA Multi-Gun Nationals. What do they call it? What do they call it there? Tack irons? Is that
I think it was Tack Limited.
Oh, Tack Limited. And 3-gun Nation Midwest Regional in limited division. Factory division. God, this is getting confusing. Factory division. I know, right? And then also the Extreme Bullets Texas 3-Gun Championship with another title there. Nice belt buckle to go along with it.
Still the coolest prize in this game, man. I love that.
Yeah, and it's a cool thing because it's unique, right? It has the year on it, has your division. And have you picked up a belt so you can actually wear it?
Well, see, that's the thing. I'm not a cowboy hat or boots and belt kind of guy, but I started wearing this one. I didn't wear last year's, but I decided that, I've got it. I'm going to wear it. So I wore it to a bunch of my buddies' MMA fights locally here.
Nice. You're like, hey, I got belts. I'm going to wear a belt. I know,
right? I figured it was close enough. So I wore it to a couple of those. But yeah, so I've started getting a little bit of mileage out of it, which is kind of cool.
That's awesome. You got to be the only guy with an ornate belt buckle in Detroit.
Yeah, a belt buckle and a flat bill hat. I don't think that's how they're designed to work, but I'm making it work.
Flat bill hat. Oh, come on, man.
Gotta wear my Vortex hat, man. I love that one.
Yeah, they actually gave me one of their hats as well, and I've tried my hardest to throw a little curve into that bill. I think I'm getting it in there.
Don't ruin it, man. It looks too good.
I don't do the flat bill thing.
It's Detroit. We kind of have to. We assimilate with the culture.
Yeah, you don't want to stand out up there.
Well, yeah, I messed that up with the belt buckle.
Yeah, exactly. Now you just confuse them.
I know, right?
Getting their OODA loop. Well, so Rick, it's been a good start to the season. A little bit of a rocky start with some malfunctions and things like that at the Texas, Three Gun Nation Southwest Regional, where we did the commentary. But man, looks like it's drying up out there. We're shooting some 3-gun in some actual sun, which is nice.
It's like 75 degrees here today, so it's finally turned up here, so I'm pretty happy. Hopefully I can start getting some serious practice in. Well,
so in limited / factory / tack irons division, obviously there's no optic there's no magnification on the rifle. What type of optic are you using these days? I know it's a Vortex, but which one is it?
Yeah, I run the Vortex Spitfire.
Okay.
I think you'll find that most of the guys that are winning in the limited or factory division are running that optic. It's a prism style optic, so it's got eye relief just like a magnified optic, but it doesn't have the floating dot in the center. It's actually an etched reticle, so it's much more clean and crisp. It's just for the game we play, there really isn't a better option. It's a nice 3 MOA dot. Everything lines up perfectly. Your holds are easy. All around, it's fast and it's easy to use for our division. So there really isn't another thing to compete with it out there.
Now I got to use one of those on a PCC that I borrowed from Rob Tate at that Texas Southwestern Regional. Sorry, all the Texas matches are spinning together in my head, but
all 14 of them.
All 14
so
of them.
many
at the Southwestern Regional. So I had a PCC that went down, and I borrowed one from Rob Tate, and he gave me one that had a Vortex Spitfire on it, and that was the first time that I had used one. And I was super impressed with it, and Ruben from Vortex was on my squad, and I was like, hey, how do I get one of these? So I actually have one that I'm going to be shooting at a running gun next weekend that I'm pretty pumped about, because it's going to save me almost a pound over running a normal scope with a mount and everything like that. Plus it's super clear glass and that etched reticle. So the reason I bring it up, Rick, is I need some help, man. So I noticed that there's all kinds of dials and things like that on this, and you can actually dial in for distance shots. So tell me a little bit about how you shoot for distance in your division where you can barely see the targets.
Yeah, that's really the crux of the division. That's the hardest part, and that's what drives a lot of people away, especially at your major matches, because you talk about going out to 300, 400, 500 yards. For me, the nice thing about the Spitfire is it's got, especially the Spitfire AR, is that it has a BDC dial on the top for the elevation. So you can quickly go 200, 300, 400, 500 on the top dial and dial in the reticle for whatever distance you're looking to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't use that right now. I haven't had a whole lot of time to test it out and put it through its paces and get comfortable with it. So I just stick with the holdovers that I'm used to. For now, I do plan on putting some time in that this summer to really try to vet it and get comfortable with it. Because if you had a stage, let's say, that has 3 targets at 400 yards, it would be much faster just to dial it beforehand and then just hold dead on, as opposed to holding over like we traditionally do and kind of guessing with your Kentucky windage.
Well, and then with paper targets, you don't necessarily have to worry too much, since we have so much ground to cover on like a 3GN target or a full-size IPSC target or a full-size USPSA target. So that, point of impact change for, going from, say, like a 100-yard zero to a 400-yard zero isn't really that much when you're talking about close range. So but
Yeah,
it
a
becomes
400-yard
important at
zero.
400.
I know that a 300-yard zero is a 25-yard zero. So that's kind of like a battle zero for the military. So if you
Huh.
were shooting at a bank of targets at 300, then you'd be set basically for any paper that was in up close because it'd be 25-yard zero.
Oh, I gotcha. So what do you what do you zero yours at?
So the range that I belong to has a 50-yard bay or a 100-yard bay, but I zero at 50 yards because I I don't want to get into a situation where I go to a match and they don't have anything more than a 50-yard sight-in bay.
Ah, yeah.
Because if you can sight in at 200 all you want, but if you're going to verify after you get off the plane and all you can verify is at 50, then that's what you got to know. A lot of guys they'll zero their reticle at the first hash mark at 300 yards, for example, for a variable optic. But if they don't have a 300-yard bay, then you're shit out of luck.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I have kind of stuck with the 50-yard zero for that very reason. I know in chatting with Nick Atkinson, your teammate, that he does a little bit different. He zeroes at distance, but then he knows what his hold is on the closer targets. So if he runs into that sort of situation, then he's like, okay, well, I know it needs to be this exact distance, and as long as it's that, then I know I'm good farther out.
Yeah, and it's different for all sorts of people because I'm in a situation where I fly to a majority of the matches I shoot just because of the distance I am away from them. So because of that, I can't carry as much gear, and I have to be worried about what happens with the airline and the baggage. So, whereas some people are able to drive to a match and not really worry about their zero getting too messed up because it's just in the back of the car, I've got to be ready to check zero every single match.
Right. Well, so I'm glad you brought that up. So one thing I've noticed about your game and how you travel is specifically to the matches that I've been at is that I don't see you on Friday for walkthrough, and then Saturday you're there and ready to shoot. So what's the idea behind that? Like usually we hear like you got to get there, you got to walk stages for like 9 to 10 hours, and you just kind of show up late in the night.
It's not a final exam, Dave. You're not going to pay. It's not pass fail. No. So with me for work, I only have so many vacation days. So I'm only able to take so many days off. And with SHOT Show and other trade shows that take a lot of time, SHOT Show, for example, takes 4 days. So that's almost a third of the vacation time that I have. So I've got to be very selective, not only what matches I go to, but also how I get there and what days I get in and out. And that's why, these Three Gun Nation regionals being 2-day matches, they help me a lot because I can usually fly in on a Friday night and then fly out on a Sunday night. So I almost take no vacation time for some of the regionals, which is really what allows me to get as many matches in as I can.
I gotcha.
The way I'm able to do that, though, it's twofold. One is I've got an excellent team around me. Our team, as you know, is comprised of some of the best 3-gunners in the world. So when we come up with stage plans, we're pretty confident that they're going to be the best plans.
And so for people that, may not be familiar with your team, maybe give them
if you're just tuning in, our team is Captain Keith Garcia, Nick Atkinson, Kalani Laker, and myself. So we've got a lot of different guys with a lot of different background and miles in this game that are really familiar with the ins and outs of it. And when it comes to stage planning, I mean, if you put the 4 of us on a stage, I'd put our plan up against anybody's.
Yeah, and so a ton of experience in that, and a ton of experience across like a broad array too, because Kalani's shooting open or unlimited this year, and then you've got 2 practical or tac op shooters with Keith and Nick, and then yourself in factory or tac irons.
Yeah, so what usually ends up happening is, Keith and the guys will walk the stages, and then there's always going to be like 3 or 4 stages that you really don't need to walk. So they'll just say, don't worry about them, and I'll learn them when I get there. And I basically, in the 5-minute walkthrough, I learn the stage and I shoot it. But there's usually, a couple stages that are like a memory style stage or a longer jungle run that have some hidden targets or stuff like that. And those are the ones that I focus on getting my head around. And committing to memory once I get on the ground. But again, I mean, you got the half-day format, so I'm usually able to learn the first 4 stages before we shoot, and then zero my guns, shoot in the afternoon, and then when we're done that evening, just learn the next 4 for the morning.
Yeah, so that kind of truncates the whole deal. So that's kind of a good tip there. It's a little bit of a pro tip of if you don't have a ton of vacation, but you still want to make these matches, and if you can do the 2-day with a 2-day match with a half-day format, if you go afternoon morning, so afternoon the first day, morning, or is that right? Afternoon
Yep.
the first
Afternoon
day, morning
the first
the second
day, morning the second day, then you can fly out early on Sunday.
Yeah, and you can fly in, late on Friday and still get the time to walk those stages on Saturday morning, which
yeah, and I'll be honest, that's the hardest part about this, being in the position I'm in where I shoot as many matches as I do. It's not about the shooting anymore. It's about all the travel. It's about getting into the hotels every time at 1 a.m., getting 5 hours of sleep, 6 hours of sleep, getting up, walking a couple stages, zeroing guns, getting gear ready, and then being ready to shoot. That's the hard part.
Yeah, so now I feel bad about teasing you for all those monsters I see you drinking.
I'm not a coffee guy, so something's got to keep me awake.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we all have our vices, right? So,
yeah.
Well, so do you train for that? Do you are you like a minimal sleeper? Do you usually do like 5 hours a night, or is this a strain?
Yeah, I'm kind of a night owl. I'm usually up pretty late, and then I get up pretty early for work. But it's not even that. It's just I've learned to power through it. It's just like any other obstacle you deal with in life. You just got to get to it and get through it.
Yeah. Well, so now I got to say that when we were at the Southwest Regional, we did commentary of the pro shoot off on Saturday night, right, when it was raining.
Yep.
And so you stayed up late on that. And
yep.
I mean, it wasn't ungodly late because they hustled that thing along just because it was.
We were out of there by 10:30.
Yeah.
And we stayed after a long time.
Yeah, it's true.
We talked with Eckhart for a while. Kalani came back over. I mean, we were there for a while.
Yeah, exactly. But then, so that cuts into the sleeping time. So hey, thanks first of all for sticking with it like that. But I got to say that I didn't notice if you were sleep deprived or anything, or you seemed like you were powering through it just fine.
Well, I mean, that's part of the deal, right? We're out here representing companies, and it's all about that. You gotta put your game face on, not just on the range, but when you're dealing with people and when you're interacting, because that's what we're there for. The shooting is such a small portion of it. We're ambassadors to their organizations, whether it be Vortex, Cobalt, AR Gold, all these guys, Atlanta Arms, Rio. I mean, we're ambassadors, right? So sometimes the first and only opinion people will have of that company is when they see you that one and only time. So that's really the hardest part about being a pro, is being on your game all the time.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a tough one too. When if you're tired and maybe a little hangry or something like that.
Oh yeah, I mean when we get switched to because at that match we got switched to the AM start. So I wasn't very happy Saturday morning after like 4 hours of sleep, getting up and shooting at 7 a.m. But it is what it is, and you got to put your smiling face on. And there was a little bit of extra pressure for that one because we were squatted with the 3-gun 101 class. So we volunteered. The Cobalt team volunteered to go first on every stage so that the 3-gun 101 shooters could see how each division was run before they ran their stage.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So Kalani, Keith, Nick and myself all rotated like who went first, second, third, or fourth, so that the new guys could all like watch each division before they got to shoot.
That's pretty cool. So what was that experience like?
It was cool. It was a lot like shooting a local match as far as questions. The guys are really anxious to learn, and they were very receptive. And Mike Sexton was the kind of the leader of their pack, and Mike's a great guy. He's got a ton of energy, and it was just a great atmosphere. It's great to be able to be someone's first intro to the sport and kind of guide them through their first major match.
Yeah, that's cool. So were there any factory shooters that were in the 101 class?
I think there were one or two. I can't remember exactly. There were like 12 people. We had like a 17-person squad.
Yeah, your squad was huge. It was holding everybody up. I'm just saying.
I know.
No, you guys managed pretty well for the size of squad. That's a big squad to have at a regional for sure.
Well, yeah, it was a little bit tougher because, as you know, I mean, I'm not sure some of the people out there, but traditionally with new shooter squads or with squads with a lot of new shooters, it slows things down a bit. It makes reset a little bit slower because they're questioning some of the calls on the paper and they don't know if they should paste yet or not. You know, do I need to show the RO, the 1 Charlie, or just call it? So it took a little bit longer, but we got through it.
Yeah. So from there, from the Southwest Regional, was it the Texas 3-gun was the next one?
Yeah, like 2 or 3 weeks later, Texas started up.
Yeah.
And that's a go-to for me every year, just because Kurt and Aaron, those guys, they put on such a good match, and you know the belt buckles are cool as hell. They get tons of support. It's a great facility. They got all sorts of options. You know, it's definitely a match that I would go to every year.
A lot of care is put into that match. You know, you can tell by the stages that they've got a lot of personality, a lot of character, and as far as like the whole match feel in general, they care a lot. You know,
well, it feels like a traditional major. You know, it's a 3-day match. Yeah. You know, it's got the half-day format, which is a big plus in my book.
Yeah, I like the half-day format myself.
Yeah, I don't like being there all day for on off. That just takes too long, especially somewhere that's as hot as Texas.
Yeah, you know that's a good point. And when it's raining, you're sitting out in the rain. When it's hot, you're sitting out in the hot. And when it's hot and raining, you're sitting out in the hot rain. So
yeah, there's not a good way around it for the staggered format.
Yeah, and you know I can understand why they do that in some situations, just because like have you ever been to Rocky Mountain 3-gun?
I can't understand it. I'll be honest, Dave. I think it's dumb. I'm gonna pull no punches. I think it's stupid. You've got the option. Why not do it?
All right. Well, so since you brought it up, you're not pulling any punches. Tell me why. Sell me on it.
Well, I mean, you're paying all this money to be there. Why can't we be there for the 4 hours we need to shoot and then get some off time, or use that time then to go visit the sponsored tents or the side matches and stuff like that? When you've got the alternating format, what it basically means is you got to shoot your stage and then you've got to either just go hang out for an hour or find something to do. Usually it's not enough time to go do a side match, depending on how far you got to travel to get to it and how close they are together. Or you're going to be right there looking at your next stage because your head's still in the game.
Yeah,
It's tough to break away from the shooting.
It is, and I would say that as well. Like it's for me, like I want enough time to get to the next stage where I can get keep in the game. I can get my head in the game if I. And
you never want to feel rushed.
Exactly, never want to feel rushed. But also once I get there and then now an hour has passed, I get a case of the F-its, as I like to say, and now I'm like. Kicking bumblebees on the ground and eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and like, I'm bored.
You can definitely lose your focus for sure.
Well, and the focus is such an important thing, the awareness of what's going on in a match, and then to have that time in between where you lose it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see a lot of benefit to it. I'm really happy that most of the matches have gone to the half-day format. When I started, there was no half-day format. That never existed. So, I'm familiar with both. I just really don't like the staggered format.
So, would you shoot a match that was a staggered format now, or you just gone?
I mean,
gone
it
and don't
wouldn't
want
be
to come
the
back?
only. I mean, it wouldn't be the reason why I didn't go.
Oh, okay.
I'd still go if it was still a good match with good support and good venue and good stages. That wouldn't be the deciding factor. I just prefer it.
Got it. Yeah. So it's interesting. I've kind of found that I don't know, I want to say like maybe trying to think like who likes the on-off format. If you like the on-off format,
I don't know. And I don't know why you would like it. That's the thing.
If you like the on-off format, comment.
Call in. Call in.
Put a comment wherever you see the show. Be it Facebook, be it Instagram, be it on the show's podcast or show's blog. tell us why you like the on-off format, because I'm honestly curious, because everyone I run across is the same as Rick and I. We like the half day. So if you're a proponent of the on-off, let me know why.
I don't know of a single person that likes the on-off personally. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I'd be very curious to hear a valid reason.
According to Facebook, I don't know a single Democrat, but I'm sure they're out there.
I do. They're just muted.
Well, Facebook mutes that for me. They've decided all I like is super right-wing gun nuts, and here we are.
Yeah, gotta love the algorithm.
Yeah, exactly. So, Rick, you mentioned earlier, or just a minute ago, that you started and it was mostly on-off format, and then it's kind of morphed into the half-day format. You started 6 years ago shooting three-gun nationally. You started like 2009 shooting three-gun on a local level. It's a lot of time in the game, right? So that's 8 years shooting a sport, 6 years nationally. Are you going to shoot it next year?
Hell yeah, man.
So
it is a long time. I mean, a lot of good shooters have come and gone in that time. It's really amazing to see kind of the progression. You've got a lot of guys that have done this and kept doing it year after year. Guys like Kalani and Keith, and Jesse's been in the game for a long time. Obviously Greg and Dan and all them. But it's really amazing to see how people get to a really high level and then they'll just stop. And it obviously, family commitments and marriages and kids and everything like that will play a huge part in that. But yeah, I mean, I'd say 6-7 years is probably longer than your average three-gun career at this point.
Yeah. Well, yeah, sure. If you put everyone on a bell curve, you're probably on one of the ends, right? So
yeah,
it's funny you mentioned that. Like I remember early on in the show, and I don't remember who said it because multiple people said it, but it was the comments where I've seen a lot of people come and go in this game, and I had a realization recently of, oh hey, where's that shooter? That person last year that was making all that noise. Where is that person? And it was a funny realization because I've only been doing the show for 2 years. So I've been shooting three guns since like 2011, but I've only been like hyper aware and paying attention to everything that happens on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. And in practice score for 2 years. And in 2 years, there was like someone who just came and went like a flash in the pan. And to be honest, I don't even remember who it was right now. I couldn't tell you, but what?
Well, and it's amazing because they could have been very, very good. I mean, there was a guy, and I'm still friends with him. I haven't seen him in forever, but Jesse knows him, and so does Chris Anderson. But his name was Mike Chambers. He was excellent. Mm-hmm. He was a great shooter. He used to shoot limited with me and Chris Anderson. He made the Pro Series the same year that I did in like 2012, 2013, one of those. And then he disappeared. I mean, he won our Pro Series match, our qual match. I mean, he was a great shooter, but then he just dropped off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
It happens. And, like I said, there's different people have different commitments in their lives. And,
sure.
Real life happens. It happens. That's just the way it goes. But
yeah, it's not like
I think you'll start seeing that more and more now that you're aware of it, is that there will be people that you stop seeing, and you don't realize it at first, but then somebody will bring it up or something will remind you of them and you won't know where the hell they went.
Yeah. Well, and so everyone's clear, we're not ragging on these people or anything, because we understand that there's, like you said, life commitments that come along with everything that we're doing.
I mean, if somebody has a kid or gets married, that's way more important than anything we're doing out here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
but I'd be interested to see, like guys like Taryn and Jerry and Pat Kelly that have been around for a long time and seen it all. Like, how many guys have they seen come and go?
Yeah. Yeah. No
Pat
kidding.
Kelly. This dude is as OG as it gets, right? And Jerry and Jeff Cramblett and all those guys,
Mike
like
Boyd.
And Kurt Miller. Like, how many guys have they seen come and go?
Absolutely. Well, and so then.
Well, it's funny because they're probably laughing because I'm saying 6 years, like I've been in this forever, and they've been doing it for 30 and 40, and I think I'm a joke.
Yeah, I was just thinking. So as a young whippersnapper that has been only doing this for 6 years, and just turned 30, by the way. Congratulations on making it another year.
Dude, my body doesn't work like it used to now. Everything hurts.
Dude, wait to
30 is a milestone.
Wait to get to 37. Like, no joke. A friend of mine told me he's like 37. That's the year when I realized I was old. And
Take me in the woods and shoot me.
People that are 57 right now are laughing at me, but it's a real thing. So
just take me to the end of one of the jungle runs and put me out of my misery.
We're gonna old yeller you.
Prairie storm only.
Oh, can't say that. So
I know.
So Rick, what then do you think contributes to your longevity in the game? And then as you look forward into thinking like, I want to be doing this for another 14 years, 15 years, whatever it is, what are you focusing on to make sure you have that longevity in the game, that you can be like a Cramblett or a Voigt or a Kurt Miller or Eric Miller?
The biggest thing for me is, well, I guess there's a couple things. One is you got to always have a good time, and you got to love being around the people that you're hanging out with and shooting with. In that aspect, I'm extremely lucky because Kalani Laker is one of my best friends in the sport, and he is hilarious, and he's just a good dude. And same with Keith and Nick. I mean, they're all great guys. I like hanging out with them, and it doesn't feel like work, when you're out on the range. That's always a huge plus, and that takes a little bit of the stress off. The other is, taking small breaks here and there, whether it's don't touch a gun at a match for 2 or 3 weeks locally and then get back into it right before the next major. I mean, you can't have streaks like I just had a couple weeks ago where you got a major every week and you got to, get home on Monday, do the laundry, put it back in the suitcase and fly out on Wednesday. You can't do that forever because you'll get burned out if you try to do that for 3 or 4 years. But, if you can put little breaks 1 week here, 2 weeks there, just kind of reset, I think that helps me a lot. Just not become overwhelmed or burnt out with, everything that goes on and all the preparation. That's
a good point, Rick. And it's something I experienced last year because, as you know, I went like whole hog into it. And
you went like 1,000 matches. It was ridiculous.
I did. And either I was shooting a match or I was driving to a match to shoot a match,
Right.
And at that point, toward the end of the season, there definitely was like a level of burnout. Now, I've cut it back this year quite a bit, and part of it has been, talks I've had with you and talks I've had with other guys as far as like, hey, look, you need that break. That break is important. So I programmed in breaks throughout my 2017 season, and it's still a lot of matches by, anyone's yardstick, but it's it's going to give
it feels manageable.
Yeah. Looking at the calendar this year is as a look forward compared to looking at the calendar from last year as a look backward. It looks way more manageable for sure.
Well, and I don't want this to sound elitist by any stretch of the imagination, but one thing that a lot of people that just do this as kind of a hobby or a once every 6 months type of thing won't understand is that it's so taxing when you're doing one after the other. When you're home for 2 days, 3 days between matches, and you're all the way across the country, you go from Vegas to Minnesota to Texas, it's such a different game than when I used to shoot 1 or 2 majors a year. In 2011, I think I shot 3 majors. This year I'm shooting like 10. It's such a difference when you can prepare for 4 months for that major you're about to go shoot versus, hey, you just got home, clean your shit and get back in the plane.
Well, so 2 things. One, can you imagine like doing anything as much as we do 3-gun or as much as you can do 3-gun? You would get tired of it, whether it was like sitting on a beach or, anything,
I don't know. Jesse hasn't gotten tired of that yet.
But if you made 12 trips a year to like sit on the beach, eventually you'd be like, you know what? I'm bored. I want to go shoot some guns,
But we keep coming back for more, baby.
Exactly. So then the second thing would be, back in the day, and I always, it's a fun trap to get. It's a fun thought exercise to get trapped in nostalgia, but it is a trap. And so think about back in the day when there were 5 major matches, and so you knew that I was going to shoot this and this and this and this, and I threw a check that I wrote out by hand into an envelope and put a stamp on it.
It was so easy. It was so easy back then.
Well, and so now you have 5 matches throughout the entire year, and there is,
where you're going, you know what hotel you're staying at, you know how to get there.
And there's a month and a half in between to practice for the next one, right? And so you know the match flavor of each one, and you can just go and do that.
Well, and that's what I used to do. I used to practice specific elements from each match. CMMG used to have a lot of mid-range distance stuff, like 200 yards with your rifle canted. So I'd practice that. They'd always have a spinner, so I'd make sure I practiced the spinner. They all had different flavor, and you could get ready and prep for each one.
Yeah, and then you had the time to get ready and prep for each one, right? So you had, when you came home from that last match, now you've got, like, say, a week to decompress and do nothing. That second
change
week,
mindsets.
That second week, you can pick your guns up and clean them, maybe. That third week, you go into practice mode, right?
Yep.
So, and then you still have multiple weeks until the next match to do that practice. So
now what I end up having to do is I take those weeks, and that first week becomes day one. So Monday I don't do anything. That second week becomes day two, but I skip that because I don't clean them anyways. Then I usually don't end up having time on Wednesday to go shoot because I have a job and real life happens. So you end up just leaving the guns in the case and just doing the laundry and getting back in the plane.
Yeah. So yeah, there's people that have played like minor league baseball. They're listening to this right now and thinking like, "You think you got it bad?"
Oh, I know. They're on a bus for 8 hours after a game, and they got to hit batting practice at 10 a.m. the next morning.
Yeah, exactly. So,
no, that's definitely a life on the road. I wouldn't want to have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, woe is me. It sounds terrible to think like this is work and is a job and stuff like that. But it's definitely taxing on a human, and it's definitely taxing.
Well, the other thing to remember too is that most of us do have real jobs as well. So I mean, if this was all we did, yeah, it wouldn't be that bad, and I wouldn't be able to complain about it. But I mean, you're doing that while you're trying to balance a real life.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and just the maintaining like your electric bill and your water bill and stuff like that in between traveling. There's a lot of time, I think, like most of America wastes. And, we're out there, fortunately, we're lucky enough or fortunate enough or smart enough to be out there doing stuff that exercises our brain. And, I for one, am pretty grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I mean, it's the ability to be out there and hanging out with some of your best friends, even though they're all the way across the country, even for just a couple of days. It's awesome. I mean, that's what keeps me going in the sport, being around people like the guys on my team and you and all my friends I have in the sport. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's always a good time when I when I see those 4 blue jerseys and I'm like, oh shit, this is gonna get fun real quick here.
Here come the shenanigans.
Well, so aside from just like the the shenanigans and taking those couple week breaks, what are like some other things that you think are going to help you over time with longevity and maybe some advice to people that are just getting started as well?
I mean, those are the big ones. You don't want to burn yourself out with practice or dry fire. I mean, they're obviously important and you need to do them to maintain your capabilities. But the biggest thing is just getting into an environment that you're comfortable with and that you enjoy, and being with people that you enjoy being around, and just not stressing about it. If you take it too seriously, this game will eat you up because, 90% of this game is mental. You get to the top tier of this game, top 10, 20%, we can all shoot about the same speed. We can all do about the same things. It's really about match management and keeping your mind right.
Yeah, and if you're, burning yourself out in practice or in travel, then you're not going to be able to keep it together at the match, and then it becomes unfun.
Yeah, you can't hate your life. I mean, you got to be there having a good time. You start taking things too seriously, or acting like winning is the only thing that matters, or what defines you. Then that's when you really start getting into trouble, because you'll put too much pressure on yourself, and every stage will be the most important stage of your career, when in reality it's not, and it really doesn't matter.
Well,
the problem is, in the moment it'll feel like it, right? I mean,
yeah.
It's one thing to go down to the final stage of a match and be in contention to win and know that it's an important stage. I get that. That's a situation I've been in quite a few times, and it's something that a lot of people fold under. But what people end up doing to themselves is they'll put themselves in that situation on every stage, and you just can't maintain that.
Well, have you ever been in that situation where you're putting yourself under too much pressure?
Yeah, I mean, I used to take this way too seriously. When I started shooting nationally, I always wanted to do really well, and I always wanted to try to win, and I always wanted to beat people. I mean, I used to ask people what their time was on every stage, from one stage to the next, 'cause I want to know how many seconds I was gaining or losing. And I still do that a little bit to benchmark, but now it's nowhere near, as number centric as it used to be. I used to track every score every night and do the math to see how fast I had to shoot every stage and how fast I thought my competitors would shoot the stage and do all this engineer math in my head and just drive myself crazy. And now it's just like, all right, well, just go do what Keith did.
Well, and you're very very fortunate to be able to have Keith there to just do what he did. But so you mentioned engineer math. Now we have practice score, and it tells you all.
I know,
that
man.
Without even.
If I had that when I started, I would have driven myself crazy.
Well, so
I mean, if I had all those numbers available to me, I would have done all the situations like mathematically to figure out what I needed on every stage. I never would have shot again.
Do you do that now? Do you look at practice score and think like, oh, I need to do this?
I mean, I benchmark it based on what some of the top guys are doing, and I just say, all right, I want to be in the 40s, or I want to be mid 40s, or 42 is good, or the biggest thing at a major is consistency. So I don't have to win any of the stages. That doesn't really matter. I just need to be 90 to 95% on all of them, and I'll win every match.
So how do you how do you plan for that consistency? And so consistency has come up like a few times in the podcast recently, and I'm struggling with like how to I understand like consistency is important. I'm understanding how to implement it.
The biggest thing for me, and because if you probably go back and look at all my scores in my 6 years, you could probably count the number of penalties I have on, your hands and feet. I don't take penalties. I'm very conservative, and I don't take unnecessary risks. So I'll shoot target 3 times if I'm even a little bit uncomfortable with one of the shots. Now, it won't help my raw time, and I can't do that. I wasn't able to do this on the Pro Series when it was all fast as hell. But at like an outlaw match, I'm a lot more conservative. I traditionally will finish without a penalty. Obviously, stuff happens, right? You hit a no-shoot here or there, but
yeah.
The biggest thing for me is mitigating risk and not taking unnecessary risk. And that really all starts with your stage plan. If you can throw in an extra quad just to have a couple extra rounds just in case. Okay, so I wasted 2 seconds, but the stage takes 50 seconds. So did I really lose anything? If I missed once or twice extra, now I'm talking about all this port loading on the clock, and now that 2 seconds I wasted really becomes 5 seconds I saved. So that, and how you choose your positions and what targets to shoot from where, what guns to shoot at what targets. I really try to eliminate unnecessary risk wherever possible.
How do you evaluate risk?
I look at the reward and see if it's worth it. So if there's a target, let's say for instance a handgun plate that's like an 8-inch knockover at like 35 yards, which is a good poke, right?
Right.
If by shooting that one target I can eliminate having to pick up my shotgun at all, it's probably worth it, even if I have to shoot 3 or 4 times. But if I'm only going to save one quad load and I have to shoot the shotgun anyways, it's probably not worth it. So to me, it's based on the reward, almost like do the ends justify the means?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just, and that's something that you get more comfortable with the more matches you shoot. Trying to balance, it's almost like the balance of speed and accuracy. It's very similar to that. It's a pendulum, and you can't go too far on one side or the other, because you start getting too conservative. Obviously, your timers are going to get a lot slower, and you can shoot 9 times at every target just to be safe, but that takes it to an absurd, right?
Right.
But yeah, to me, it's all about the reward, and that's how I judge my risk.
Interesting. So that managing risk has to play into long range target shooting factory, right? Or is there ever a time where you think like, I'm just spending too much time here. I'm going to move on.
Well, that is driven a lot by the size of the target.
Okay.
When they run 10-inch targets, like the normal MGMs, anything past 4 kind of becomes a bonus. I mean, obviously, if you can do it, you're going to save a lot of time. It also depends on the penalties. If they're 10-second penalties, just wing a shot at it. If they're 20, you got to start thinking about it. But if they're BCs or full IPSCs at 4 and 5, then those are very manageable. My rule of thumb is traditionally I make 500-yard targets just bonuses because I don't have a whole lot of practice space up here to shoot at them. Mm-hmm. So my holds aren't that great. But I know I can smoke 2, 3, 4, 450 no problem. So it really, and then not only that, it depends on the position, how stable you're able to get. I mean, there are certain things you're just not going to be able to do, and you've got to be able to identify that and be okay with it. To me, that's one of the harder things is leaving a target and being okay with it. I'll never forget. I shot a match. One of my first couple years, I was squatted with Jerry for the first time ever, and we had this rickety like swing that you had to shoot like 60-yard slugs off of, and it was like a mattress that was like floating. Like a shaky bridge type deal, right? And you had to be seated with your feet up off the ground. No, it was weird. It was real weird. It was back at Ozark.
Sounds weird.
And I'm watching Jerry do his stage plan, and I was still way green. So I asked him, hey, what do you think, Jerry? Because I mean, they were probably 10-inch plates at 60 yards off this swinging mattress thing, and there were 4 of them, and it was tough. I mean, it was a hard shot. And Jerry goes, I'm just going to burn 4 rounds because I'm not going to be able to hit him. And at that moment, I realized if Jerry can't hit him, I don't have a chance. Because I've been doing this for like a year, and he's been doing it for 30. And if he thinks he can't hit him, then I'm not even going to try.
It's true, man.
The biggest thing is just being okay, coming up with a plan and being okay with it. If you think you can't hit something, then just let it go. Engage it and move on. But don't go to war with it. That's what the biggest problem for a lot of people is. They get so fixed on a target that they can't help but do 3 mag changes until they can get it.
Yeah, that's a friggin' tough one for sure. So that's definitely something I did at the start of my career. Is I would throw a couple mags at something, just one specific target. But now I don't, but I don't really have a rule in my head as far as like what is okay, Dave, you've thrown enough lead down there versus stick to this, you almost got it. Do you have like
a lot of it has to do with the environment of that particular shot. For me, if let's say for instance, being in factory, like I don't get a lot of trace, or a lot of impact and dust flying up because let's say we're talking for a 500-yard target, I'm not going to be able to see for the most part unless there's a real significant plume of dust. I'm probably not going to be able to see it. If I don't feel like I'm stable and I can't call where I'm at and the wind looks like it's doing weird things, you just got to take a couple and move on, but it also may be a situation where if I start seeing that impact, I may be able to walk it in. I don't really have a fixed rule for like, I'm only going to take 3 and then I'm going to move. That's not really how I play it. I try to, it's a lot based on feel for me. And how the environment is reacting to what I'm doing and the feedback that I'm getting from it. If they all feel like good shots and nothing's happening, then I'm just moving.
Gotcha. Well, and so you've got that, experience in tossing rounds downrange where, of like that was a good shot versus I screwed that one up or I threw that one or my sights weren't quite on it and I broke it too early.
It's like dry fire, right? You can't lie to yourself.
Yeah.
If you start telling yourself, "Oh, that didn't feel good," or "That felt great. Why isn't it hitting?" But you were 3 inches left and low. Well, of course it didn't hit. You didn't have a good shot. But yeah, I mean, if you take a couple shots that you feel were where your hold needs to be, and you're not seeing impact, and you're not hitting anything, you just got to move. I mean, you can't live and die on one long range target.
Yeah, that's true. Well, so one thing that you brought up was you don't have much experience with targets past 500 because you don't get a lot of experience. I saw you recently shot a precision match, and you're branching out a little bit here. So one, you're shooting magnification, but
It's so weird. It's so weird. The targets are so big.
Do you ever like just lie down behind the gun and think like, "Oh my god, I can see the targets"?
It was so dumb. I mean, we were shooting like field courses, and that's why I was doing this because I want to get better for three gun. I mean, that's the bread and butter of what I do, right? I'm not going to try to become some precision superstar. I'm not Tyler Payne. He's a stud. But yeah, no. So me and Matt Kupika and Chip Montgomery, a couple of the local three gun pros, we went out to this. It's like a DMR style match, designated marksman rifle match. So we just took our three gun gear, and then like you were allowed to have a bipod, so we just threw them on, whatever. But yeah, I mean there were field courses, and we shot out to about 600. There were some paper standard stages, which was kind of lame. Like you shot at an IPSC at like 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, and 600. But you had like timed courses of fire where like at 100 it was standing, kneeling, prone, 2 shots each, mag change, 2 shots each on the way back up. And then you did like different positions all the way back to 600.
That's like, NRA high power, right?
What?
That's like NRA high power, right?
Well, but you did it at every distance from 100 to 600. NRA high power is like at just 600, I think.
Oh, I got you.
So, but you had all these different positions, like standing, sitting, kneeling, prone, and it was all the courses of fire were a little bit different. And then you had to do mag changes in between, which obviously we did those really well. Everybody else struggled. But that was all right. I mean, there were about 100 rounds on an IPSC in these standard stages. But the second half of the day was like 7 or 8 field courses, kind of a lot like three gun. You had a position to shoot from. You had a barricade or tires or whatever, and then you had targets. They were from like 100 to like 400 or 500, depending on the stage. And yeah, man, it's just so easy with magnification. I'm shooting like 6-inch targets at 300 yards. I mean, it was just dumb.
Well, so what did you learn?
I learned I'm actually pretty good at long range.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean it's a different sport because you're obviously allowed to use supports and like rear bags and stuff, but it was all under time constraints, so you still had to kind of game it. Which would be the most efficient and what would be the most stable, and a lot of the same challenges we face, just with a little bit more gear to work with in your toolbox.
Did you enjoy it, or was it just like meh?
It's cool, man? No, it was cool. I really enjoyed the field courses. Yeah, I didn't really enjoy the standards because it just kind of felt really rudimentary, and I didn't really have any dope at 600 anyways, so it was just kind of like shooting just to shoot. So I was just kind of praying regardless.
And so, are you shooting a 223? Same
yeah.
Okay. Same type of gun you shoot normally?
Yeah, I shot my Cobalt. Yep.
Okay.
Same gun.
Same ammo and everything?
Yeah, I still ran my Atlanta 77s.
So the only change then is that you stepped up to magnified optic?
Yeah, and then threw a bipod on the front. Yep. That's all we did.
What magnification optic were you using?
I just ran my 1:6 Razor Gen 2. A lot of guys had like really high power, like 4-16s or whatever, but I wasn't going to practice with something that I wasn't going to use.
Right. You're like, 6 is enough. I got this.
Oh, it was plenty.
Huh.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Well, that's cool. So
Chip and Matt were out there with they had the new Trijicon 1:8s. That's a really nice optic. That was cool to see and get to, look at that a little bit because they're sponsored by them. So they get to, they got some of the early ones.
Yeah, I got to play with one of those recently, and I was super impressed. It's good optic.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they did a great job. And Trijicon's local to me here in Detroit, so I know a lot of the guys that work there.
Especially the 1X. I really like the 1X.
Yeah. Yep. And that was one of the things that Matt had said, that because Matt ran a Razor forever. Matt ran the 1:6 for a long time. Mm-hmm. And he believed that the 1X on the Razor was the best 1X in the game. Mm-hmm. And he shot a few of them. But yeah, the 1X on the Trijicon is very nice. Yeah. I mean, it has an advantage because it's a 34 millimeter tube, whereas the Vortex is a 30 millimeter tube, so it's able to gather more light.
Right.
But I can't wait, man. Vortex with their new Strike Eagle 1-8, so that's going to be awesome. And I can't wait to see if they're going to do either a PST Gen 2 1-8 or a Razor 1-8, because
Yeah.
they're gonna. I mean, they're not going to stop. They're innovating all the time.
It's coming because
Right.
it just keeps getting bigger and bigger in magnification for our sport, and then Ruben Alexson over at Vortex plays our sport and really enjoys our sport. So yeah, you kind of wonder if something like that's coming.
Well, and coming out with the Strike Eagle first was brilliant, in my opinion.
Yeah. So it's a little taste, and then hey, if you want some more, we got this one over here.
Yeah. So when we get you addicted, we got the big money one for you right here.
Yeah. So okay, so you did you branched out into precision. You had a good time. Probably do it again. You learned a little bit for 3-gun here. Let's completely switch gears up here, and let's talk about some constraints that you have. So, Rick, that I've been here in Texas since December, and it's because the rest of
because that's where you parked.
Well, that's correct. But I parked here because the rest of the world is a little bit cold, or the rest of the northern hemisphere is a little bit cold that time of year.
You're preaching to the choir, buddy.
Yeah, and I
sure you don't want to come spend December up here?
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. I will visit you in the summer, but no, thank you in the winter.
You won't be able to cut your dog's hair short as you just did.
Exactly. And dude, guy's been like shedding like mad here since February. It's ridiculous. But so that's a real thing. So Texas, it's completely different. So in Colorado, we had an off season. And
yeah. So what was your off season? Like what months were you like snowed in for example?
Oh, in Colorado. So
yeah,
Colorado's interesting because
you're in the mountains, so it's probably a little different.
We're technically in the high plains, right? So we're at like 6,000 feet, and then most of our ranges are at like 5,200 to 5,500, something like that. So we're technically the high plains. Once you get up into the mountains, like into like 8,000 to 9,000 feet, then you're talking about snow for a long period of time. But in the metro area where I was at, like there would be days where it would snow a foot, and then 3 days later you could not tell it even snowed, and you'd be walking around with no jacket on, because it's so sunny. And that's one of the secrets of Denver, and the reason it's so popular right now, and there's so many damn people there that I had to leave.
Well, that and the weed.
Well, that too. But yeah, so it's only the mud from the range and then hunting season that keeps people from shooting 3-gun, right? So
okay.
So when the snow comes and it melts, it creates mud, obviously. You go and
We're in the mud stage right now.
Yeah.
You got to wear muck boots to the range basically every time.
Now imagine that every week or every couple weeks. And that's the state of our ranges in Colorado. And so you don't actually get out there much in the wintertime just because of that reason, because you bring like 50 dudes with 50 pickup trucks out there, and you're talking about like completely tearing up a range, right? So they don't.
Yeah, when one guy's got to pull the next guy out, who's got to pull out the next guy, who's got to. Yeah.
So they don't really allow that in Colorado. So we have like a sort of an off season, which brings in dry fire. So here in Texas, I talk to dudes, and I'm like, so what's your dry fire regimen look like? And they're like, well, why would we dry fire? We just walk out the backyard and shoot.
Yeah, well, it's the same with Texas, Florida, North Carolina. I mean, that's why you see all those guys, especially down in Carolina. They're always they've gotten so much better so fast because they don't have an off season.
Yeah.
And so if you find a guy that can stick with it and not get burned out, he's going to be good because they have so many matches and they're always in good weather.
Well, but that gets super expensive. So I almost think like maybe an off season is a benefit, because then it forces you to dry fire, which you still, you still train, you still learn, but now you're doing it indoors. And and
to me, it's not even just the cost; it's just the break. Okay. I'd still take a break even if I wasn't forced to because of snow, because you can't just keep doing it week after week after week. You're gonna go crazy.
Well, so you are forced to do it because where you live in northern Michigan. So what does your off season look like, and then what do you do in the off season other than finish your basement?
Yeah, that was pretty much most of my off season this year was doing that basement renovation. But just the standard dry fire stuff and shotgun loading. That the off season is when I switch gear around if I want to try. Like this year I went from the curved AR gold trigger to the flat AR gold trigger. That's when you can mess with things. I'm a person that will run one thing for an entire season. I don't like to change anything without a lot of time to vet it out. Whether it be a trigger or a new oil or, because this year we're working with Liberal Tears for their gun oil, which is awesome because the name is awesome and it smells like bacon. And it works. It works great. It's been great up here in the snow and everything. But yeah, I mean, I'm a creature of habit per se, so I don't like to, change too much, especially, we go back to back with matches so often that there's not really time to do that. And, the biggest fear is always going to a match with untested gear. And I never want to put myself in that situation.
I gotcha.
So yeah, the off season, it's just maintenance and, vetting out new stuff, new techniques, planning out for the season, what matches you want to go to, all that kind of stuff.
I gotcha. So it's sort of a fall back and plan, reorganize sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like a regrouping phase where you're just trying to get ready to hit the ground running. I mean, the big thing too is, you're trying to get everything lined up from a sponsorship perspective. You're trying to, add as much value as you can while you don't have matches. You're trying to line up new sponsors or, keep the old ones and, provide as much value as possible. And you're trying to get ready for SHOT Show and, coordinate, who needs you in your booth or in their booth and when and how many different appearances you're going to be doing or, all that stuff. So there's a lot that goes on in the off season that, your average shooter probably doesn't have to deal with, which that sometimes I envy. But it is what it is, and it's what makes this experience as fun as it is.
So then, do you dry fire now? Like I imagine you did quite a bit in the early days when you're, hot and heavy and a nut job about shooting. But now that it's become more of like a routine and everything, do you still dry fire in the off season?
Yeah, I do in the off season. I don't as much as I used to in the season. It becomes more of a maintenance thing. I'm trying to maintain my skill levels, and then when I get to like local matches, I use those to try to push my skill levels. So that's what I do, so I don't like fall into a rut or not improve. You always want to try to get better. The big thing I want to start working on is my foot speed. I used to be pretty quick, and now I'm old and fat and not. So I want to start doing some cone drills and stuff to get my foot speed back to what it used to be when I was actually an athlete. Because I feel like that would help in today's game. I'm lucky enough to shoot with Matt Cooper out here. Him and I practice a lot together. And, he's quick on his feet. He's really agile, and he makes up time there. Him and I usually end up right around the same stage time. He'll be faster in and out of ports and positions and stuff, but then I'll be quicker on the trigger. So if he gets quicker on the trigger and I get faster on my feet, then we'll both be able to get a little bit quicker overall.
So do you have like a fitness regimen or any sort of drills that you're doing for that?
No, the big thing for me is I don't like traditional fitness. I love sports. I just hate working out per se. So I'm going to try to do just play sports with friends, whether it be basketball, soccer, football, just to try to stay active. I haven't really had a very active lifestyle right now outside of shooting. So I think anything I do now would be a huge benefit just to get my foot speed back to what it used to be. I think that's going to be, foot speed and agility. Those are the two, because cardio doesn't play a huge impact, unless you're doing like Ironman or Hard as Hell or Fort Benning.
Yeah.
Or not Benning, but,
yeah, it's Fort Benning.
No, Fallen Brethren.
Oh, okay. I gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, it's not as much about cardio, because if you're good at managing your breathing, you can work through that. You can work through your heartbeat and everything. That's what I do now. It's more about getting my foot speed, my footwork where it needs to be, because that's really what separates the men from the boys, especially if you watch any like the really high level pistol shooters, like KC Eusebio, JJ Racaza, Eric Raffle. I mean, it's all foot stuff. It has nothing to do with the shooting. It's in and out of ports. It's breaking down before you get into position, leaving position accurately and quickly. So I think that's where I want to go next.
So do you have a plan to get there, or is that something you're currently working out?
Yeah, that's something I'm working on now. I'm just going to do a lot of the old drills I used to do in football with, like cone drills and bag drills and shuttle runs, and just change a lot of like change of directions, plyometric type stuff, really explosive. Because we're not running the 40-yard dash. We're running from port to port, and it's probably 5 yards. But it's all about that first and second step. Those are the two that are probably the most important. So if you can get a quick first step, that's probably 90% of the battle.
Now, are you you're a cleats guy, right? You wear cleats instead of
Yes,
Salomons?
sir.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. Why do you wear cleats versus the Salomons that everybody else wears?
Well, part of it is because I've been wearing cleats my entire life. I'd go from football season to baseball season. You go from one type of cleat to the other. So I'm comfortable in cleats. They provide a lot better ankle support. So on a lot of these stages where we have a real rough terrain, that can be difficult. It's really easy to roll your ankle, especially when you're talking about out in the mountains or some of the jungle runs. Especially Blue Ridge, right? You got a lot of sticks and stuff coming out of the ground.
Hey now.
Zing. No, I mean, to me, it's because I didn't want to go like full combat boot, like an 8-inch boot that, keeps you from rolling your ankle, because that just gets hot over a long day.
Yeah.
But I also wanted some support so that, we do deal with some tricky environment on the ground. And, the worst thing you could happen is not finish a match because you can't physically finish the match. I don't want to break an ankle out there.
Yeah.
But the other reason is because, I run baseball cleats, and the reason I do that is because they're designed for grass, dirt, gravel. They're designed for all the environments that we're in when we're shooting. The only one it's not designed for is like the pavement, which, I don't know if I've ever shot a stage on pavement outdoors.
I don't think I have either.
Maybe you'll get on it when you're going between bays, but
Right.
It's not something you're really going to deal with from a footwear perspective, on a stage. So I figure these are actually designed for high-level athletes in these environments, so they're probably going to be all right for us, casual athletes in 3-gun.
Yeah, no kidding.
My explosiveness is nowhere near a professional football player, so I think I'll be all right.
Yeah, or a guy stealing second.
Right, exactly. Well, that was the reason I chose baseball spikes, because they are designed for not only grass but dirt and gravel and basically everything we deal with. I used to run football spikes, but they don't dig in as well when you're not on grass, so I switched over.
I gotcha. Interesting.
I mean, everybody's got their own. A lot of guys like the Solomons. I just don't feel like they give me enough bite, especially if it's wet. The worst thing that can happen is you just lose your footing on a stage. Like you're trying to stop and they go out from under you. I just don't want to have to deal with something like that.
I gotcha. So for your off season, you're focused more on finishing that basement. You're doing just some sort of a maintenance dry fire, just like basic type things, I'm guessing. And then now you're kind of focusing on what can improve that foot speed. What's your focus going forward? Like, what's gonna give Rick Birdsall the edge in the next couple years?
I think it's twofold. I think one of them is going to be keeping up with this precision rifle stuff and learning how to shoot long range better. Partially with the vortex that I'm using for my 6.5 Creedmoor, I'm using the 4.5 to 27. I want to learn wind and how to judge it and how to take all those environmental factors into account. They don't play as big of a role in 3-gun, but I think if I can understand them, I can better master what we do. And then the other big aspect for me is going to be, in addition to the foot speed stuff, is going to be target transitions. That's where a lot of time can be gained, is from one target to the next, moving your gun with authority. It may not seem like a lot, but 0.5 or 0.05 or small changes from one target to the next, multiplied by the 30 targets on the stage, that could be 3 seconds. So in a raw time match, that plays a big role, especially you're talking 3 seconds a stage, 8 stages, 24 seconds just in that. So that's another thing, and that's something I've been watching my buddy Matt Cooper pick up a lot of time on, was his target transitions. He moves his gun with a lot of authority. So that's been another item on my checklist.
I gotcha. Well, cool. So Rick, we've covered quite a bit here, man. You're on a streak for the season. What other matches do you have coming up here? Where are we going to see you? And what are you most looking forward to?
We got a couple different state championships here. We got the Great Lakes Championship in Southwest Michigan, Bend of the River.
Ah, yeah.
Going to be doing that one with your buddy Zach. He runs that one.
Cool.
Yep. And then we got the big state championship at the club I used to run the matches at in September. That's kind of like the de facto Michigan championship. So I'll be shooting that one. Coop and Chip and Nick and the guys run that one now. I'll probably be ROing and helping out with that. So that'll be fun. I've also got the Pro-Am, the Rockcastle Pro-Am in August. And then the Three Gun Nation Nationals.
Sweet. Well, I might see you at the Pro-Am. I'm trying to make that one, and I'll definitely see you at Three Gun Nation Nationals. Rick, man, this is it's always a pleasure to talk to you. This has been a good time here, getting into your head and trying to pick your brain, and I think the audience is going to benefit from it. So, Rick, if you can leave us with one final thought or one piece of advice, what would it be?
Try not to stay in my head for too long. It'll scare you.
That's probably pretty good advice.
The biggest thing is just get out and practice and have fun doing it. If you don't like being out there, and if you don't like practicing, you're never going to get any better, because you're always going to avoid it. Find a group of people you can practice with, get better with, and hang out with, and have a good time. Otherwise, it's going to be a very short career.
I like it. Well, Rick, man, this has been a ton of fun. Always appreciate your time, and always enjoy chatting with you. So, hey, man, thanks for coming back on the Three Gun Show, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Anytime, man. Looking forward to it.
Hey, before you take off, check out the show notes at threegunshow.com/episode 131 for links to things that we discussed in the podcast and to purchase your own Three Gun logo t-shirt. Now, I mentioned earlier that this episode is brought to you by Armalite. Armalite likes the community that we are building over here at the Three Gun Show, and they've chosen to support us for the 2017 season, which I am completely grateful for. So to be sure that it is a win for you as well, Armalite has allowed me to get special pricing for listeners on their line of three-gun rifles, both the 13.5 and the 18-inch rifle, as well as their competition handguards, gas blocks, and tunable muzzle brakes. Also, upper receivers. Seems like a lot of guys are interested in getting a 13.5-inch upper for their current rifles, so that's pretty cool too. If you're in the market for a rifle or components to build your own, email me at dave@threegunshow.com, and I will send you pricing. Also, I'm starting up my summer match traveling again soon, and I'll have all this gear with me too. So if you want to check it out, just let me know. When you see me at a match, say hi, and I'll be happy to show you. One last thing before I let you go, Rick and I recorded a bonus Q&A podcast with questions from members of the Three Gun Talk group on Facebook. Here is a little taste.
Give the people what they want.
That's right. Are you, with our crowd being three gunners, it's a mixed bag. You never know what you're going to get. It's always a little sketchy. Just popped open the Facebook here.
You always know what you're going to get. And it's never above board.
So the question that I put on Facebook right before we got started, what I put was, hey kids, right now I'm recording a podcast with Rick Birdsall. Once we're done, I'll get him to answer some Q&A from the audience. What do you want to know from one of the best limited shooters in three gun? ? I'll revisit this thread shortly. Ellipses. So, you ready, Rick?
Fire away.
Moving on then. John McClain says, but you said you're interviewing Rick, not Cody Leeper or Joel Turner. Smiley face, smiley face, smiley face.
Does Cody still shoot?
I think he does.
Joel's an open now, so he doesn't count.
That's
but
true.
I did beat his teammate, so that works, right?
Oh, man, it's going to be like that, huh?
Hey, if people are gonna throw this at me, I'm gonna throw it right back. You know me.
You're like a raccoon backed into the corner. You're just like swiping at the air and everything. And that's what they call a teaser. And this episode will be coming up soon. As always, I'm working hard to bring you even more content for your commute or your walks or for your gym time, whatever it is. So subscribe in iTunes, Google Play, Podcast Addict, or wherever you get your podcast content so you always get the very latest. Thank you so much for downloading, listening, and subscribing to the show. I'm Dave Hartman, and I'll see you on the range.
If you are finished, unload, show clear.